Hey there, movie enthusiasts! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the thrilling world of Don't Worry Darling. The movie opens at Dean and Bunny's house at a party where many couples are there. A woman named Bunny shuts down the winning pair in a fun game where the spouse has to balance plates on their head. A couple, Alice and Jack, sneaked out of the party to enjoy eating donuts in a car. The following morning, Alice makes Jack breakfast. They both are really happy with each other. Every now and then, the ground of the whole town shakes. Alice asks Jack if it's connected to Victory's projects, but he won't tell her and leaves. The couple and their other couple friends reside in a 1950s-style community called Victory Town, where the wives all see their husbands off as they leave for work at the same time to travel to Victory Base Camp in the desert. After Jack leaves for work, Alice does certain household chores like cleaning and washing. After that, Alice and the other wives attend a dance class taught by a woman named Shelley, who is Frank's wife and the one who came up with the Victory Project. During the class, they meet Violet, whose husband Bill is also working with the other men at the headquarters. After ballet class, Bunny and Alice see some men in red jumpsuits helping the new neighbor, Violet and Billy, move. They gossip about their friend Margaret not attending the class because she's become an outcast in town after a mysterious incident. Later, while Alice is in her garden, she sees Margaret in her backyard, holding a toy plane with her eyes closed. Alice doesn't understand what's going on and decides to ignore it. While preparing dinner, Alice finds all the eggs in her carton strangely empty. Just then, the dinner she was preparing started burning in the oven. After that, at Frank and Shelley's house, the entire neighborhood comes together for a pool party and to view the next phase of their Victory Project. When Alice gets there, she starts singing to herself, but Bunny tells her to stop since she was sick of listening to the same song for so long. Although Alice is aware she has no idea what tune it is in her brain, when the tune plays, Alice sees strange sights. Just then, Bunny interrupts her. She forgets about them once more. They all gathered together as Frank was about to say something. Suddenly, Margaret speaks up and tells everyone they shouldn't be there, but her husband Ted quickly takes her away. Frank steps in and reminds everyone that they are building a safe and orderly town for everyone. Alice finds the things said by Margaret weird and leaves the party to look for her. She finds Ted giving Margaret medicine at her house, and Margaret tells Alice that she's having bad dreams and everything is not fine. Ted closes the door abruptly. When Alice returns, she finds Jack in Frank's room and they start kissing. Things get strange when Frank shows up and watches them silently before leaving. The next day, while shopping, the ladies start talking about Margaret. Apparently, there is a rule in the town that no one can go into the desert, but Margaret thought she saw something and went there with her kid. Upon finding her, the kid was missing. Margaret claims that some people took him away as a punishment, but the ladies don't agree it to be true. They feel that Margaret is having some mental issues. Some ladies also believe that the men are making some weapon, due to which the ground shakes. Alice has some really unusual dreams later on that night, and the next day they continue to trouble her. She rides a trolley out of town and into the desert to get the hang of things. She notices a plane in the sky flying down and slamming into the mountainside where Victory HQ is situated. She asks the trolley driver to take her there, but he declines, explaining that it is against the law and not on his route. Alice decides to continue on foot and climbs the mountain. Instead of finding a plane, she stumbles upon a strange dome. She calls for help, but no one responds. Curious, she touches the glass wall of the dome and has disturbing visions of drops of blood and women dancing in sync with Frank's voice. Suddenly, she wakes up in her bedroom. Alice finds Jack cooking in the kitchen, but she can't remember how they got home together. When she mentions the plane crash, Jack refuses to acknowledge it. Alice thinks it might be just her bad dreams. The next morning, while cleaning, the glass wall behind her starts moving and pushes her against it. She tries to push back, and suddenly, the wall goes back to its place. Then, her phone rings, and it's Margaret calling. Margaret asks Alice about the plane she saw, but Alice denies it and tells Margaret not to call her anymore. During her ballet class, Alice sees Margaret's reflection in the mirror mimicking her moves. But when Alice looks closely, Margaret starts banging her head on the glass, which frightens her. Alice yells, but everyone else in the room is surprised because they can't see anything unusual. She runs home and sees Margaret standing on the roof of her house. Alice attempted to help her, but sadly, she took her own life. As Alice rushed towards her, a group of men in red suits appeared out of nowhere and took her away. In the evening, Alice tries to tell Jack what happened, but he doesn't believe her. Jack says Margaret's husband is with her at the hospital and tells everyone she's okay. They argue, and Jack yells at her, warning that answering those questions could ruin their great life together, and asks her to stop. To distract herself, Alice watches TV, But this triggers a new hallucination where she feels like she's drowning in a pool. Before she can make sense of it, she finds herself back against the same glass window. The next morning, Alice is wrapping dinner leftovers when she suddenly loses control and starts wrapping the wrapper around her head. After a few seconds, she takes it off and catches her breath. Jack brings Dr. Collins for a checkup. The doctor says her stress might be due to seeing Margaret fall, and he mentions that sometimes the mind can alter reality when overwhelmed with grief. He prescribes medication, but both Jack and Alice refuse to take it. While Collins and Jack are leaving, Alice notices classified files about Margaret in Collins' briefcase. When Collins accidentally forgets the briefcase, Alice starts searching for clues, but Collins returns to get it. Alice pretends she was just picking it up to give it back to him, and he believes her and leaves again. Luckily, Alice managed to take a file with Margaret's name on it, but when she opens it, all the pages are blacked out. Alice burns the file because it was empty. Afterward, she starts drinking and takes a bath, but suddenly she sees disturbing images again. She also sees a couple holding each other. Jack comes home, and she snaps out of it. He plays music and asks Alice if they should have a baby. She asks him to think about it. Later in the evening, they attend a fancy party organized by Frank at a restaurant. Frank keeps staring at Alice, and she notices one of the singers is the same lady from her visions. Overwhelmed, she starts crying and asks Jack to take her home. However, Jack refuses, saying Frank is about to make an announcement. Frank calls Jack to join him and announces his promotion. Everyone starts celebrating, but Alice has a breakdown and rushes to the bathroom. She sees the vision of the couple again. Bunny comes to check on her, but when Alice tries to tell her about what's been happening, Bunny yells at her, saying she shouldn't have broken the rule by going into the desert. Bunny accuses Alice of trying to ruin the party and leaves. A few days later, Jack and Alice host a dinner party at their house. Frank and Shelley with some other couples came. During dinner, Alice decides to sit at the head of the table to face Frank directly. She starts asking everyone where they are from. Alice realizes that all the ladies have the same story about how they met their husbands, and most of them come from Philadelphia, Chicago, or Baltimore. At this point, Alice straightforwardly accuses Frank of being involved in something suspicious. Jack tries to stop her, but Frank encourages her to continue. Alice shares everything she saw and how she believes Frank is lying to everyone. Frank calmly says that Alice is suffering from the same condition that Margaret had. Shelley gets angry at Alice and yells at her for insulting her husband. Shelley leaves the house, and the other couples start leaving too. Jack accuses Alice of trying to ruin the night, but she defends herself, saying that Jack means everything to her and asks him to leave the place. Jack agrees and leaves. Alice hurriedly packs her things and sits in Jack's car. Suddenly, some men in red come and drag her away. Jack apologizes and cries as Alice is taken to a clinic where doctors give her electroshocks. She has flashback memories of a couple, which was her and Jack. In the memories, Alice works as a nurse at a clinic because Jack lost his job, and they live together in a small, run-down apartment. Alice takes care of all the household work and finances. After her long shifts, Jack doesn't help with anything, and he wants to be intimate with her, but she's too tired after managing everything alone. Jack used to listen to Frank's speeches at night. After some time, Alice snapped out of her visions, and Dr. Collins told her she was fixed and sent her back to the community. She resumed her daily tasks, and everything seemed fine. One day, Jack came home humming the same song, triggering memories in Alice. She saw herself being dragged down a floor, and Jack was there, having joined the Victory Project. The Victory Project is a fictitious play that husbands use to manipulate their women and get what they want. Alice is constantly connected to Jack's unique equipment at home. When Jack travels to the headquarters in the desert, he disconnects from the machine for a few hours each day. He looks after Alice's actual body the rest of the time, while also working a part-time job to pay for the machine. Alice collapses on the ground and sobs. When she confronts Jack about everything, he becomes aggressive and says that he did it for their perfect lives. Alice, however, believes he acted selfishly. She hits Jack with a glass, knocking him out. Jack, connected to the machine, closes his eyes. Frank receives a call about everything that's been happening. Suddenly, Bunny comes to Alice's house, and they cover Jack's body. Alice tries to explain, but Bunny confesses she already knows. She chose the simulation because it's the only way she can be with her kids again after they died in real life. Bunny explains that Alice needs to go to the headquarters and disconnect herself because Jack can't do it for her in the actual machine anymore. Alice agrees and runs outside. To her surprise, the streetlights begin to explode, and men come, asking about Jack and attempting to stop Alice. Bunny appears and pushes the men aside to assist Alice. The men in red steal vehicles to pursue Alice as she flees in her automobile. They begin ramming her vehicle with their own. Dr. Collins is pursuing her in his automobile as well, but Alice steers her vehicle to avoid a collision, forcing Collins and the others to collide. Frank receives the news of Collins's death at home while the call is on speaker. Shelley overhears everything and approaches Frank, stabbing him. She tells him it's her turn now. Meanwhile, Alice is driving away and gets her car stuck on the side of the mountain, blocking her way upward. The men in red suits start climbing the mountain to chase her. Alice reaches the dome and briefly feels as though Jack is behind the glass wall. Memories of her and Jack start flooding back. But then she sees the men in red suits running towards her. She runs to the glass mirror, puts her hands on it, and pulls her head back. Everything goes black. And after a few seconds, some blurry memories of her past life are seen before the movie ends.